This week, I have a very special interview with a master photographer who has over 70 international awards, and he is a Sony Artisan. My guest is the incredible Mr. Scott Robert Lim. Stay tuned.
You're watching TOGCHAT Live, the only live show dedicated to the hows and whys behind creating consistently great photographs. Here's your host, Joe Edelman.
Hey gang, welcome to episode number 235 of TOGCHAT. I do hope you're all healthy and, of course, still wearing a mask, practicing your social distancing. So gang, you know the drill. Check in. Please leave me a comment. Let me know you're here and where you are in the world. Already, I've got Ken here from the UK. We've got Joe in Michigan, John out in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Jim in Maine. Lawrence is here from Thursday in the Philippines. We got Jean-Edward in the Netherlands. Let's see, Alan in Denmark. FN89, still my favorite handle. Ottawa. I've got Margo in Atlanta. Let's see, who else is way back here? We got Jason in Akron, Ohio. Robert down in Mexico. You guys are awesome. Absolutely. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here, gang. You're all part of a growing global community of photographers in over 100 countries who tune into, watch, or listen to TOGCHAT every week. And for that, I'm going to work really hard to help you with your photography in the next 60 minutes. And it would help a lot more people find out about TOGCHAT if you could do me a solid. Just hit that thumbs up, right down there below the video, right? The more thumbs up, the more that YouTube will recommend the show to other photographers. And hey, of course, while you're down there, feel free to go ahead and hit that share button. Let your photography friends know that we are streaming live on YouTube right now. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link in the chat window for you. Twitter, Facebook, they're the fastest way to get the word out. And hey, if you're a member of any photography clubs or groups, please let them know about TOGCHAT. Don't keep it all to yourself, right? And remember, gang, TOGCHAT is available for download as a podcast every week. I'm also going to share the link for that in the chat window for you. And of course, all these links are in the show notes already. Look, the podcast, it's a great way to get your weekly fix while you're editing or retouching. And each episode of the podcast includes content that you aren't seeing here on YouTube. So don't miss out. The show's available on iTunes, Google, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and pretty much anywhere that you like to get your podcast fix. I post the podcast a few hours after the end of the live show each week. So check it out.
Next up is a TOGCHAT exclusive interview.
I had an awesome chat this week with an international, award-winning master photographer and educator, Mr. Scott Robert Lim. Now, if you're not familiar with Scott, he is also an outstanding educator. And believe me, in this interview, he shares some awesome knowledge and tips. So stay tuned. I'm going to play the first 23 minutes of the interview for you here on YouTube. And then the full unedited interview will be available for download as part of the podcast later this evening. Again, usually around 11 p.m. Eastern time here in the U.S. So make sure you check it out. Scott shares details about his career path and about his choices, and he gives us really some awesome insight into his creative process. You're not going to want to miss it. Scott has allowed me to share quite a few of his images here tonight during the interview, but I also want you to be sure to check out his website to see more incredible images. Links are in the show notes. I'll also share them in the chat during the interview. So let's go ahead. Let's get right into it. Scott Robert Lim, I have to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me on TOGCHAT. You've been on my hit list for a while. And in part, and I'm going to be completely honest, I'm ashamed to admit this, I knew very little about you until about a year and a half ago when I met you for the first time. And found myself kind of kicking myself in the butt that I didn't know a whole lot about you when I got a chance to really go through your interview, your website and your portfolio. And so I would like you, if you could, to take just a minute and introduce yourself to my audience. Tell them a little bit about you and what they should know. And then I've got lots of questions for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've seen you and I was like, oh man, I got to hook up with Joe. And then I think it was in Cleveland that we met.
That's right.
Was that right? Yeah. And then I just, said, hey, hopefully down the road we can connect. But, yeah, my name is Scott Robert Lim. I am the only Asian college dropout you'll ever know in your entire life. If you know Asians, we have like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 degrees. And then if you don't have like at least 2 degrees, they kick you out of the house or whatever. But that's my claim to fame. I started out as a wedding photographer about 20 years ago. And then eventually evolved into an educator. And then I would classify myself, I still do about 6 weddings a year, but I would classify myself as more of a portrait artist, an on-location portrait artist. And that's what I really love because I feel it's the hardest thing to do in photography. Go on location with the elements. You have no idea what's going to be out there fighting with the tourists and then trying to get a great shot in those just random elements that pop up. I just love the challenge of it and teaching others how to overcome any adverse situation and get a shot.
And your work is absolutely amazing. So that brings me actually to my first question. Given that you started as a wedding photographer and your wedding work is incredible, I think for me, one of the things I love most about your wedding work, so much emotion stands out in your wedding images, which obviously that should be the case, but we all know there's plenty of wedding images out there that are, a little stiff, a little formal. I think your work is absolutely brilliant. So what started that transition? What was the catalyst to getting more into the portraiture and the location portraiture?
I got a great answer to that. When I did a lot of weddings, I kind of had a niche group that I, covered, and I shot a lot of Asian weddings, and Asians are very kind of proper and don't like to make any mistakes. And so sometimes their personalities are kind of a little bit reserved or just kind of cautious. And that was great training for me because I had to learn how to get the emotion out of them. And so it developed my technique with my photography to create that emotion if you don't see it. And a lot of that is your own personality, because if you kind of come into the portrait session all stiff and stern directions and all like that, that's going to make them kind of put up their walls even more. So I had to learn to just break down those walls so they could feel comfortable with me and kind of just joke with them and have fun with them and to bring that emotion out. And so I think the thing that I really take away from that experience is that your clients and your subjects actually reflect you in a way. So if you're open and you're, caring about them and make them feel comfortable, they're just going to come out and you're going to see all that emotion. And so I think as portrait artists, the one thing is you got to break down those walls, those that prevent from getting to the true essence of that person. You got to break it down within minutes, really, to get a great photo.
So, that you make a couple really great points there. So I completely agree with you, the concept of body language and that. In fact, my wife is a cognitive psychologist. So I wind up hearing a lot of the science behind these things. And indeed, the science behind body language is that we tend to mimic what we see. So I'm completely on board with you there about, the energy in that. But there's also kind of a relationship aspect of it. So I'm going to go kind of right into it here with something that I know a lot of photographers struggle with. And that is that as a portrait photographer, you frequently only have a few minutes. And maybe even if you have an hour with somebody, that's not actually a long period of time to be able to get a person to relax, to trust you, to establish any kind of a relationship. Can you share, maybe you have a system, or maybe there are some tricks that you find consistently work, in addition to making sure you're showing the kind of energy and emotion that you want?
Yeah, wow, that's huge. I mean, I got about 10 hours of content on that subject. Let's see, where do I start? I think the first thing you got to come in is I kind of start initially complimenting them right away. Because I know a lot of times, maybe they put on an outfit or something and it's the first time wearing it and they're not sure if they look good or whatever. And that's the first thing I come in kind of complimenting them. Oh man, I love your shoes, or you guys look great together, or whatever it is. I start off with that. And that makes them feel comfortable because, they start to feel good about themselves. And then the second thing that I do is I actually show them kind of what I want. So if I'm posing, even if it's a female, I do the female pose. And so they start laughing and they go, well, if he's going there and trying to do the pose, feminine pose, and, then I can certainly do it. And I think those two little things like that just help break that ice. And so then they can start to have a trust in you. And I think so a relationship always starts with a trust factor. And so I think those two things right there, very simplistically, break it down. And I think here's another huge thing is I noticed this because I watch a lot, I teach a lot around the country, and I see how the students react to the subjects. When they're not skilled and they don't feel confident in their posing, and there's a lot of pauses in between shooting and setting up lighting and all that kind of stuff, the client feels a bit lost. And so clients love direction. And I think that helps that communication with your client. You start directing them, and then they may say, oh, well, I feel a little uncomfortable with that. Okay, great. Let's try this, And so it's just that communication that you've got to get going, and the direction. And if you're not really skilled in posing and directing, then it's going to kind of reflect in your work, and you're not going to get the most out of your subjects all the time. Now, if you've got a model and you're hired and they're trained to give you what you want, even if you don't ask for it, then that's easy. But if you're most likely doing this for money and you have subjects who've never even posed before, direction is huge to them, because if you don't say anything to them, they're going to feel like, am I doing this right? Am I doing it wrong? And they're going to be so apprehensive, and they're not going to give you everything that you need for that great portrait.
Agreed. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I would guess that even if you're working with a model who's more experienced, and I'm talking specifically about you now, you are probably still very verbal in terms of giving that model feedback. Even if you feel that she's kind of working in the direction that you want, I have a feeling you're still giving her a lot of feedback while you're shooting.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you're shooting, let's say outdoors, and there's a bright light. I have to have them pose their nose in the direction of the light all the time. And so, but they might try to go back to the power pose that they think looks great, but then the lighting is not set up for the pose that they're doing. And sometimes they don't understand that. And so I'm constantly directing them in a bit, too. So yeah, you're right about that.
And that's great. And you just brought up another good point. So I at least want to make sure people catch it and catch why. If you're working outside, you're working with a bright light, you want to make sure that their nose is aimed towards the light. Why?
Well, what people don't realize that because that light is so strong, let's say the light is coming from this direction here, which it kind of is actually. If you turn your face away from the light, it's going to be shadow here. And so when you try to go back and massage it in Photoshop, you really have to do a lot of work at this time because there's bright light, there's strong shadows. And so that's what people don't realize about shooting on location and shooting in the bright sun is that the shadows create problems. So you want to minimize the shadows and put them on the right place, which is the face, right? And so you always want the face, the brightest part of the portrait. And if you don't have that nose towards that bright light, then you're going to be in a world of trouble because you're going to have to Photoshop the heck out of it. And it's a lot of times it's not going to look natural.
Sure. And I sort of seeing you work when we were together in Cleveland and even seeing a lot of your images, I get the sense that you don't feel when you're outside that you have to be using huge modifiers. Like I see in a lot of your images, you're not afraid of working with smaller light sources. And of course, I know that you're an ambassador for Stella Pro lights, which I am as well. And I have you to thank for that because I had never even heard of those lights until I met you. I was walking past one of your photo walks at the Pixel Photo Fest, and I saw you talking and I saw the light and I kind of did a double take. And finally I had to walk over and kind of sneak into the crowd. Like, what is that light? Like, so it was the first time I saw them. But I get the sense from even looking through your portfolio that you don't feel like, okay, I'm outside, I've got to go with something that's big and with soft, that you do use a lot of smaller direct light.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because of this philosophy. I feel like if you're out in very bright light and you see sharp shadows on the ground, then you're in a hard light situation. So if you have hard light on your subject, hard light in your environment, it still looks natural. And as a wedding photographer, you don't have time a lot of times to set up your softbox and all that in the midst of things, because sometimes you got a few minutes. Oh, here's a typical situation. Oh, you have your wedding ceremony at 10 or 11, and then when it's finished, you go out and shoot portraits when it's like noon. It's like 2 p.m., the worst time of day to shoot, right? Hard light situation. And so wedding photographers are forced to shoot in that terrible situation all the time. And I've just learned, hey, I can use hard light because I'm in a hard light situation and it's still going to look natural. And so that's why I can get away with it. It just depends on the lighting, situation.
So your outdoor portraiture, you have images in your portfolio from really all over the world. I mean, you've got incredible stuff from Paris and Cuba and very stylized. And I would suggest your photography in general is very stylized, which I love. I have great admiration for that because there's so much emotion behind it. And to be clear, folks, I'm talking about emotion, not just in the subject matter, but the styling, the lighting, composition, all of it. Do you work, essentially with a team when you're doing those type of stylized portraits? Do you have a stylist, a hairstylist, makeup artist, etc.? What is that look like in terms of your normal workflow?
I don't have the budget for that kind of stuff most of the time. And so what I do is I tell my models, hey, you got to become camera ready, right? And so a lot of times they, because just do your makeup. Even so, a lot of times these people that you see, they're not professional models or anything. A lot of times they're just friends that you see. And I just say, hey, just do your makeup like you're going out to a club at night or something like that. And here's the key is when you have good lighting, the makeup and things like that tend to not be as critical. Because if you think about it, what is makeup? Makeup is like putting the rouge on and the highlights on. It's actually recreating good lighting on your face when there is not good lighting. So I would have some of these models, they would come and they wouldn't even actually have any makeup on at all. But if you put them in great lighting, you can overcome a lot of that styling that wasn't done, but you put it back into your photo. And then with great lighting, your Photoshop and your post-processing can really be stylized also. So it all kind of works together. But I don't necessarily, I just, most of these people that you see online are just, friends of mine, and they're doing it, just as a hobby to model. And they just, most women know how to do their makeup, and I just let them do it.
That's awesome. And it's actually, this is a great contrast. I just recently did an interview with Lindsay Adler, and we
Oh,
talked a lot
yeah.
about her creative
Oh,
team
man.
and that she
Yeah.
works with. So to go a little step deeper into this, let's keep it in the context of working with friends, relatives, or maybe, young men or women who are interested in modeling but don't really have a lot of experience. How much planning and preparation, how much guidance are you giving them before a shoot in terms of outfits, in terms of their hair, in terms of their makeup? How much detail are you going into?
Um, Actually, I kind of a lot, because depending on where you're shooting, a lot of times I'll maybe give them a shot of the location and I say, hey, I'll give them a direction. Oh, I want the girl next door look. Or we're going to do some sort of kind of glamorous feel, sort of like this. And so I have to give them kind of a general storyboard, or some, people need like the environment and kind of the theme that you're going after. And so the more that you kind of prepare for that, you can direct your client in that way. And I gotta be honest, I buy dresses. So like I'm like in there and I'm shopping there with my wife or by myself. Hey man, this is on sale. Like, and so so whenever I go on, let's say Paris or wherever, I will buy clothing that I have. And so if they don't have anything, they just like, oh, hey, Scott, this looks great. And then they just, wear it. So I actually bring some articles of clothing for my subjects to wear if they, want to use it, which is great. And I think here's another important thing for me when it comes to styling and doing on location. So when you shoot on location, it's not like a clean backdrop. There's a bunch of, just like my background, there's like yours is nice and clean and beautiful. Mine's like a bunch of crap back there, right? And so when you go on location, that's how the real world is. And so what I mostly do is I tell my subjects, hey, I need a lot of solid colors, what you're going to wear. And so if you see a lot of my portfolio, I buy these gowns that are like red, royal blue, yellow. And so they can pop off that frame because a lot of times there's a lot of distracting elements in the background. I have to keep my subject clean. And so that's huge too.
Very cool. Great advice. Excellent advice. So I referred to your work as being very stylized. I don't know about you, but I always find this a challenge when people ask me this question. But how would you describe your style? Have you ever thought about that, or do you have a description?
Yeah, definitely. Because what I try to do is teach people to have their own style. So like I had to analyze how I created my style. And so I divide up photography into 4 kind of foundational pillars, right? So it goes from posing to lighting, right, to post-processing and to composition. And so I have specific methods, what I do, formulas, let's say, on each of those 4 foundational pillars, what I mentioned. And so that's why I think when you look at my work, especially later in my career, it all kind of looks connected in some way because I'm basically using the same formulas in each of those 4 different areas. And so that's what I teach. I come in and I tell a person, hey, learn these foundational like principles in each of these areas. And then once you get the basics down, you can create your own style. But you have to have the basics first, right? And so that's like anything in life. Like if you were, let's say, to play basketball, right? Okay, you got to learn how to dribble with your left hand, then your right hand. You need to know how to play defense. You need how to shoot the 3-point. If you don't do all those three things, let's say if you only know how to dribble with your right hand, you're going to be limited and you're not going to be able to create and do the type of things that you want to do. And so that's the hardest thing for photographers when they're first starting out. There's this huge mountain they got to climb. You know, they got to wax on and wax off for hours and hours before they really can develop their style. And I see a lot of these people, they want their style right away. You know, I need a signature style. Okay, well, let's see. You know, do you know posing? Do you know light? Do you know how to do natural light? Do you know how to use constant light? Do you know how to use, flash? Can you shoot in the studio or can you shoot on location? It's like, there's so many. And then posing. Can you pose one person? Can you pose two people? Can you pose a group of people, right? Going on location. Do you know how to find the best composition here? There's all these things that you got to know. And if you just focus on, doing the basics in all those and knowing them like the back of your hand, where you don't have to think about it. You step into a situation, I know exactly what I can do right here. Then once you know that, you have extra time to put your creativity on top of it. But if you go into a situation and go, I have no idea what kind of lighting I should do here. Should I do flash or should I do constant or shoot natural? And you're just fighting with yourself. And then on top of that, I don't even know how to, this person's not even posing for me. I feel lost. Like that whole session, you are just fighting to get the basics down. Where's your creative, signature style going to come after that? Your creativity is completely clamped down. You only have creativity when you're just flowing and you know exactly what you do, and then you're starting to have fun on top of knowing the basics.
I completely agree. You brought up a great point in there in terms of kind of going into a session and having to kind of work your way through, well, what kind of light should I use and all this. A little bit earlier in our conversation, you talked about sending your subjects images sometimes that show the location that you're going to shoot at. So are you doing that routinely where if you're planning a shoot or planning an idea, you're going to go out and do your location scouting, you're going to figure out where I want to shoot at what time of day, so that you're also able to arrive at that shoot kind of with a tentative plan of this is how I want to light it, this is the kind of feel that I'm after? It sounds like that's where you're headed. And that's where I'm going to leave you hanging because I really want you to hear the entire interview. And gang, that is only about a third of the interview with Scott. So as I mentioned earlier, the podcast goes live around 11 p.m. Eastern Time in the U.S. tonight. You can find it at www.TOGCHAT.com. There is a link in the chat window and also in the show notes. And really important, I want to let you know that Scott is offering a free masterclass called Discover the 4 Pillars to Gorgeous Photography. I have a link for you in the show notes, and it's in the show notes. I'm sorry, I thought I had it here. But seriously, I highly recommend it. I've checked it out. Pretty awesome stuff.
It's time for this week's photo quote and featured photographer.
You see, I'm not interested in mediocrity in photography. I'm not interested in selling cat shit to dogs. I just want to do my own thing. If people like my work, all the better. If they don't, too bad. This week's photo quote is credited to Ralph Gibson. I love this quote. It's a sentiment that I have subscribed to my entire career. Face it, you're only capable of doing what you do. So it is a waste of energy to try and do what somebody else does. Gibson is an American art photographer. He's known for his incredible photographic books, like picture books, coffee table books. Born in 1939, he studied photography in the U.S. Navy and then at the San Francisco Art Institute in the early 1960s. Gibson went on to assist Dorothea Lange and later Robert Frank before he launched his own professional career. Gibson's photographs are in many important museum collections, and they've been shown in hundreds of exhibitions across the globe. What I love about Ralph Gibson's work is details. He has an amazing way of photographing the obvious in a way that's simply not so obvious. Even his fashion work features a bold graphic element, which is detail. And make sure you go through his website because there's tons and tons of images in here. I mean, there is a depth and a range to Ralph Gibson's work that shows an incredible strength in creative skill. So I have the link to Ralph's website in the show notes. I'm also going to go ahead and paste it into the chat window for you right now. Take a look and appreciate the attention to detail that is shown in so many different creative genres in his work. Now, this week's Talent Under 30 photographer is a Philadelphia-based editorial and commercial photographer named Margo Reed. I'm honored to know Margo. She's 25 years old and already has a depth of experience that is way beyond her years. Margo grew up in a very small town near Reading, Pennsylvania, and I first met her when she was 18 years old, and I was a judge for a photography competition that she deservedly won. And honestly, it's been an honor to watch Margo grow as a photographer throughout her college career. Many of you have heard me talk about giving my interns Vivitar 283 flashes to work with and learn multiple flash lighting. Margo is one of those interns. And I'm thrilled that last year, she graduated to Godox flashpoint lighting and remembered what I asked her when I handed her the 283s. She passed them along to a young photography student, so those Vivitar 283s are still helping a young photographer learn how to light. What I appreciate most about Margo's images is that they show empathy and respect and a sincere curiosity for the people and the world around her. Part of what makes Margo so amazing is she has a fearless curiosity that honestly has taken a small town girl to some incredibly scary places, and yet that curiosity continues to grow. She markets herself as an editorial and commercial photographer, but already in her 20s, she has freelanced and been on staff with the Philadelphia Inquirer. Not an easy task. In fact, it is a highly coveted job that I fought for in my early 20s, and it came very close, but I didn't make it. If I could be so bold, I would give her a different label, and that label is a documentary photojournalist. And if I were to make a prediction, we're going to see a career full of work that will take the viewer to places that they would be reluctant to go on their own. So I'm sharing the link to Margo's website and also her Instagram in the chat window. You'll also find the links in the show notes. I encourage you, check them out. And folks, all these young photographers that I'm mentioning, please give them a follow on Instagram. Understand that for them, Instagram follows actually help impress potential clients, potential photography editors, etc. Remember the name, Margo Reed. She has a great future in this industry. And one more thing, folks, you can help me out and hold the door open for a younger photographer. If you know of an incredibly talented photographer of any genre, under the age of 30, who is creating exceptional work, please share his or her Instagram handle with me so that I can check them out and possibly feature them here on TOGCHAT in a future episode.
It's time for some problem solving. The TOGCHAT Q&A.
All right, gang. It's time. How can I help you this evening? I do have one question that came in on my Facebook page a little bit earlier in the show. So I'm going to try and help this young lady out. It's from Gina. And I told her if she hurries up and tunes into TOGCHAT, I'll answer her question for her. So the question is, my Lightroom keeps crashing and I'm so frustrated. I have an HP. It's 2 years old with enough RAM. I contacted tech support, but they couldn't help me either. Should I buy a new laptop that has gaming hardware? That's what I was told. Well, Gina, here's the challenge with what do you do with your computer and Lightroom. Since you say that it has enough RAM, that doesn't actually give me a number, but I will tell you this. In my opinion, you don't want to be working with anything less than 8 gigs of RAM. Most people will tell you 4 gigs is going to be great for doing photo processing that, but I'm a big believer 8 gigs is a minimum, even more. But here's the real issue. Getting a gaming machine is not necessarily going to solve your problem. Lightroom has one, shall we say, design flaw to it that if you do a Google search, you'll see photographers everywhere at all different levels complaining about. And that is the Lightroom catalogs. The bigger the catalog gets, the more space it takes up, the more memory it requires, the more processing power it requires for the computer to be able to manage it and look through it. That is actually what will usually slow your computer down. It is usually not, with modern computers, even off-the-shelf computers, it's usually not an issue of the RAM that's causing a problem with Lightroom. It's the catalog getting so big that the existing RAM and processing power just can't manage it and work through the images. So there's a couple things that I would encourage you to do. Number one, just as a test, create a new catalog in Lightroom and see if Lightroom suddenly speeds up. In other words, just import one set of pictures into it after you do it. It's a test. And see if it works faster. If it's considerably faster when you do that, then you don't have a computer issue. You have a catalog issue. It's just simply too big, right? The other option is sometimes with Adobe products, it is worth the while to uninstall it and reinstall it. That is probably not going to solve the problem you're describing, but sometimes with software, it helps. Kind of gives things a fresh start, and you go from there. But I would not run out and buy a gaming machine before you do that. And then the last piece, telling you to get a gaming machine is actually kind of a very generic answer that will not necessarily lead you to the best solution. Generally speaking, gaming machines compared to a regular off-the-shelf machine are faster processors. They generally have, faster processors. They generally have bigger graphics cards with more RAM dedicated just to the graphics card, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of that being said, you can buy low-end, inexpensive gaming machines that indeed are more kind of souped up than the average PC or Mac off the shelf, but not enough that they're really going to make a difference. So my sincere advice to you is if you find that doing this catalog test does not suddenly speed up your Lightroom, then before you just run out and buy a gaming machine, I would strongly encourage you, plenty of information via a quick Google search, learn a little bit about what computer tech will make Lightroom faster for you. In other words, somebody gives you a generic answer that says, go buy a gaming machine. That's like somebody giving you an opinion. Everybody has a certain body part. They're kind of just like opinions. They're worthless, right? So you need to kind of take ownership a little bit. You don't have to become a computer geek. You don't have to learn everything there is about computers. But if you do a search on what are the best computer specs for running Lightroom, you'll find lots of current information. Make sure you're looking at the dates of the articles and take a few minutes, maybe an hour. Learn a little bit about what is RAM. Learn a little bit about what's the difference from RAM in your computer to RAM that's in your graphics card, etc. That way, you're going to make a decision that is knowledgeable. Because here's the bottom line. You're talking about spending potentially several $1,000s on a computer based on the idea that somebody's going to say to you, you should get this. That's a kind of a scary concept. I don't know that I would buy a computer just because somebody said, well, you should get this. If it's going to cost me a couple grand, I would like to understand what I'm buying. So I realize it's not a quick, easy solution, but it's the best solution. And the good part is you come out of the other side educated with more knowledge, and you're able to make better decisions on your own going forward. That would be my advice. I hope that helps you. All right. Now, back in the early part of the evening, we had a couple questions come in, so I want to scroll back really quick and get those. And gang, I don't have a lot of questions here. I still got about 20 minutes, so there's plenty of time. How can I help you? Go ahead and type those questions in. So let's see here. From John Bivens, what method do you use for cleaning your lens? Also, what would you recommend when shooting on location outside for cleaning if needed? Well, John, it just so happens I have a YouTube video all about that. So if we go to my YouTube channel, and we'll go to the front page of the channel there, and on the little magnifying glass, not in the search bar at the top of the page, that's searching all of YouTube, but on the little magnifying glass, just type lens cleaning. And when we do that, we're going to get this video right here, how to clean your camera lens, best lens cleaning tips and tricks. Everything that you need to know for cleaning your lens is right there, John. As far as the second portion of your question, like when you're shooting on location outside, that kind of thing, I have a feeling, I'm going to take a guess, John Folks happens to be a member of my mentoring group, and I know that this past week he was photographing some of the protests that didn't really happen in front of the Pennsylvania State Capitol, but I saw a little video clip that you posted, and I saw it was like snowy and wet and that kind of stuff. Easiest solution in that kind of a situation, John, is switch cameras, get an Olympus. That's the easiest solution because the lenses are weather sealed. But unfortunately, back in the day, the tricks that we used to use actually work just as good today. I would not have been carrying your Canon cameras around exposed the way you had them. I would have had them in plastic bags. And there's a couple ways you can do it. It depends on how much trouble you want to. Believe me, back in the newspaper days, if I had to go out and shoot something in the snow, I would take a big trash bag and put the trash bag literally over my head and poke the camera lens through it. Worked great. And you know what was even better yet? That trash bag actually would keep a lot of the heat in. And so it would, it would make it warmer and more comfortable. But yeah, you basically have to be able to, wrap the camera in something, cover the camera in something. You can wrap it in plastic, cover it in plastic. I've seen people do it with saran wrap, all types of things. And then just make sure you have a UV filter on your lens. And, that will cover you as far as, keeping the lens safe. Okay? All right. Joe's Photography out in Michigan. How would you handle a model if your paid client gave someone the photos to use in a YouTube video and you didn't know or were even asked? Joe, you have a lot of questions about things going sideways with models. Not trying to give you a hard time, but I just want to be honest with you straight up, because every time I answer one of these modeling questions, the problem is you should have had a discussion beforehand, right? And you didn't. So, but here's the thing, Joe. I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about. So you're asking me how I would handle a model, but then you're saying a paid client. So is the model the paid client? Who's the paid client? So a paid client gave someone photos to use in YouTube, or is the model the person in the photos that wound up in the YouTube video? So your question is not clear. So do me a favor, give me more detail, and I will try to answer your dilemma there, okay? All right, scrolling on down through the questions here, gang. And this is a good question. So Bob's Great TV asked this during the podcast, and I answered it, but let me just go ahead and address it really quick. Does the podcast have everything from the YouTube talk chat, or is it cut short because of the interviews? Just wondering if I needed to watch the videos as well. So that's actually a great question, and it's a fair question, Bob. As it stands today, you could, in theory, tune out right now, go watch the inauguration tonight, and catch the podcast later, and you're not going to miss anything because the podcast has all of the information that you got at the beginning of the YouTube show tonight. It has the photo quote, it has the photographer under 30, and it has the full, I believe it's about, Eric, thank you so much for the super chat. It has the full, I think it's approximately 56-minute interview with Mr. Scott Robert Lim, and it will have this Q&A. But that is going to change very soon. Analytics here on YouTube and analytics in the podcast world allow me to learn kind of when people come and go through these shows, how long they'll listen or watch, etc. And what I am finding is that with the podcast, people are not bothering to listen to the Q&A. And that's cool, because if we take the Q&A out of the podcast, it's about an hour long. That's like a perfect length when you have a good interview. So I think I'm going to be making some changes where I may be dropping a little bit of content out here on YouTube, meaning dropping out the photo quote. I may be dropping out the spotlight for photographers under 30, having all that information as part of what happens in the podcast, maybe editing the YouTube portion of the interviews a little bit differently so that, we could basically say, hey, here's a theme of questions in 20 minutes. But I am going to kind of try and switch things around a little bit, because what's happening is the podcast is picking up a lot of popularity, which I am very excited about. And I'll tell you guys for several reasons. Not all of you will like this answer. I'm excited that the podcast is growing in popularity. One, because it takes a lot of work. So if it wasn't getting paid or wasn't, growing in popularity, Gina, thank you so much for the super chat. And I do hope that helps. So I'm excited because one, the podcast is growing in popularity. And if it wasn't, I would be wasting my time, right? But two, there's actually a lot of value to the idea that people aren't just sitting, watching a video, watching me talk. They can be multitasking. They can be doing other things. And what I'm hearing from more and more people, folks, and that's part of why I'd at least like you to try the podcast. Check it out and give it a shot. I'm hearing back from a lot of people that what they love about the podcast is not seeing the visuals, not seeing the crazy guy on YouTube waving his hands all around and all that stuff. They're actually retaining more information, because without the visuals, you are left to kind of imagine and visualize on your own the things that are being discussed. So I think there's a lot of learning potential there. At the end of the day, look, I love all of you, but I'm not interested in entertaining you. There's plenty of photographers on YouTube that are entertaining people. I am focused on making sure that I am providing you with knowledge and information and a virtual kick in the butt to go out and learn and actually try it. So I'm going to keep playing and experimenting with it, see, what we could do. I'm always open to suggestions. And when it comes to what should it be, I'm open to opinions as long as you give me some context. But I appreciate you all going along for the ride. And my goal is to keep growing this community and keep making sure that it is valuable. That's the key. Okay? All right. So I've got some feedback here from Joe with his question about the model. And let me go find that. So he added here, the model was in the photos that the client gave to someone else without mine or their knowledge. Basically, it was a paid shoot, 2 models who the client set up with. Then after the photo was sent, they sent out without my knowledge or there to another person who used them in the video. Okay, Joe. So do me a favor, like next time you have a question like this, you gotta be a little bit more concise. And I can't read minds. So first of all, the problem is, you're at fault. I hate to tell you, I'm not trying to be tough on you, but I'm being honest, right? If you're not making it clear with your clients, so this isn't a model problem, this is a client problem. If you're not being clear with your clients what they can and can't do with the work, well, that's on you. If you're not using a contract, if you're not outlining that via email or et cetera, then I'm sorry, but that's on you. That is your responsibility. That's something that you should be doing, right? So that being said, the real question is, which I don't think you answered here. I just want to make sure. No, you didn't answer is, did you get the model to sign a release? And does the release cover use in these different things? So if the release covers use in all these different things, you're squared with the model. In other words, you don't have to worry about the model coming after you or anything like that. If you didn't get a release or if the release doesn't cover things, well, once again, you should have dealt with that. As far as this other person who's using them without your permission, then it's kind of a scenario where, one, you've got to decide if it's your client that sent these pictures to this person. And if your client was aware that the person was going to use them, then you've got to decide, how valuable is this client to you? In other words, you have every right to go and contact the client as well as the person that made the video and say, hey, stop, take it down. You can't do that unless you're going to pay me. You have every right to do that. However, if you're hoping to work with this client again, if you feel that this client could potentially be beneficial to you in the future, you don't want to have to do that. So sometimes the best solution to this kind of a situation is to suck it up and learn from it. And the next time, you make sure that you are being specific about what can be done with your work. And the easiest way to do this, gang, is not to be surprised by these kinds of things. And it's not, I am by no means saying, oh, clients are evil, people are evil. No, I'm just saying, look, if it can go wrong, it's going to go wrong. So you have to anticipate. You have to anticipate the worst, plan for the worst, and that way, everything exceeds your expectations. And honestly, that's the way you handle it in business. Now, if you wind up getting paid from the client for the use of this photo, be a man, a gentleman, and make sure that you're also negotiating on behalf of the model to get paid. Because even though the model was paid in the first place, if extra money winds up flowing because of this additional use, if the client says, yeah, we should have, and they decide to take the high road, okay, then, you should make sure that the model gets a piece of that as well. But again, the key is negotiate these things upfront in advance, and then you really won't have a problem. Okay? All right, from Kevin, not shooting against the black background. Okay, just trying to get the room to be dark. Been shooting at night to limit the ambient light, but the flashlight's everywhere. That has everything to do with the placement of the flash and potentially a needed modifier, but most likely the placement of the flash. So, Kevin, you have to refer to the inverse square law. What you didn't tell me here is, what is your subject? So when you say the flashlight's everywhere, well, the flash is meant to light everywhere. But I don't know what your subject is. So how far is your subject from the camera? Like, are we talking a portrait subject that's a few feet from the camera? In which case, just put the flash closer to the camera and the background's going to go darker. It's inverse square law. So what you want to do, let me switch over here. I will get you guys the link to this one. And by the way, did I share the link to the cleaning video? I'm so sorry now that I said that. Son of a gun, that did not drop in there, did it? Yes, it did. Okay, good. So let me get the link to my inverse square law video here. This video, Kevin, is basically the solution to what you're trying to do. But if you want to give me some more details about, the setup and essentially what you're doing. Oh, Kevin's saying he's got an earlier question here, so maybe I missed it. Let's see. Oh, here we go. All the way back. So he's shooting with an OMD EM1 Mark II, which the camera's means nothing in this situation because we're dealing with flash. Trying to get flash on the subject only with a black background. Manual does not allow more than a -3 in EVF for underexposure. I don't know why you would need to do EVF. Do a -3 for exposure though. That also has nothing to do with getting a black background, right? So let's be clear. The -3 thing, not going to get you a black background. That's not the point, okay? Is this hardwired in the camera or is there a workaround? So it's got nothing to do with the camera. So unfortunately, this is not an Olympus problem or a Micro Four Thirds problem. It's a Kevin problem using a Godox 860 flash. So, right. So here's what I need to know, Kevin, since you're on top of the questions here really quick. What shutter speed and what ISO and what aperture were you shooting at? Give me an example. Those three numbers, shutter speed, aperture, ISO, and then I'll break it down for you. Really simple, but you're still going to have to go watch the inverse square law video. So give me that info, and we'll come back to it. Look at Robert showing off here, doing the whole, equation thing. The best part of it, he's got the equation there, kind of abbreviated at the end. Very good if you know it, Robert. The best part of it is I couldn't do the equation if my life depended on it, but give me 3 hours, and I still won't run out of examples of the inverse square law to show you. So it's great if you know the equation, but it's actually more important that you can really put it to use and solve problems with it. So, and I assure you, I never do it with math. Okay. All right. So scrolling on up here. I saw a couple people, by the way, too, wanting to dive into some computer talk there. And I want to thank you for not pushing it. The only reason I say that is, obviously, Gina's got limited knowledge of what's happening with the computers. And it's going to help her more if she actually does a little bit of research and learns some things. So that's why I didn't want to start crowdsourcing a bunch of, all of these possible things, okay? So, all right, we're back to Kevin's answer here. Shutter speed, 250th, ISO 200, apertures, you tried them all. All right. One last question, Kevin. Sorry, I thought I had them all. How far, you said your subject was 6 feet away. How far from the subject to the background? And how far was the flash from the subject? So 2 distances. Flash to the subject to the background. Okay? Let me know those 2. All right, next up here. From Tippet Paris. I'm not even sure. It's too many syllables. Sorry. I love sepia and black and white. Is it wrong if I only take pictures in these shade? Would it impede my learning if I don't do color? That's actually a really interesting question. In terms of impeding your learning, there's a yes and no to that, right? I mean, you started out saying, I love sepia and black and white. So if that's all you want to do, then it's not wrong. Now, does that mean it's impeding your learning? It is not impeding your learning. However, it is also not allowing you to expand your knowledge base, right? At the end of the day, it's going to come down to kind of what floats your boat, literally. Meaning, well, actually, 2 things. I'm sorry. What floats your boat? Meaning, is that what you enjoy? Is that what excites you? Cool. If it is, don't let anybody tell you otherwise. I mean, personally, I hate sepia. Just being honest, keeping it real. But that doesn't mean you should hate it. It just means it's not my thing, right? But if you like it, that's awesome. But here's the second thing. If you want to make money as a photographer, I would definitely, as advice, raise an eyebrow and say, if you're going to do sepia, you have to realize that sepia is like old school. Like, when I say old school, it's the whole lip thing. It's like not necessarily in a good way. So I mean it more in the sense that if you're going to make money with it, you've got to find something that is unique that we've never seen before with that sepia. But at the end of the day, don't let anyone tell you that you have to shoot color or you have to shoot black and white or you have to do this or that. No, you don't want to do that. You do what you enjoy doing, and that's it. Okay. All right. So Kevin tells me that the background is 10 feet from the subject or 10 feet from the light. The flash is 6 feet from the light. And then he went on to say, it sounds like my subject needs to absorb the light so the background is not receiving any light. Okay, so you were doing all right until you used that word absorb, Kevin. Your subject doesn't absorb light. We don't absorb light, okay? We can block light, but we don't absorb it. And chances are your camera's seeing more background than the size of your subject, so your subject's not going to block the light. So the fact of the matter is this, it's real simple. It's actually really, really simple. You have your light too far away from your subject. Put your put your light source, let's try that, closer to your subject, and the background will go darker. But again, Kevin, don't just do what I said. In other words, don't just go do it and move it closer and see if it works. Because there's 10 other things you can screw up, right? So learn about the inverse square law. And folks, I got to be honest. So I'm not trying to, trying to be difficult to Kevin here, but please make sure you listen to the rest of Scott's interview, because this topic, not inverse square law, but what we're dealing with right now comes up. If you are not going to learn a foundation, gang, you're not going to take decent pictures. You're basically pissing your money away on camera gear, and you're wasting your time if you've got this idea that I want to get really good at this, right? It's a combination of multiple things. Scott calls them pillars. I call it a foundation. You have got to learn the basics. I come on this show every single week. I have a mentoring group. Every week in my mentoring group, I wind up lecturing somebody in that group about the inverse square law. And yet the following week, somebody in that group and somebody here on TOGCHAT will come back with a question that is easily solved with the inverse square law. You can't beat it. You can't get around it. It is stupid to try. Like literally stupid to try. So that's why the question that we had actually for so Tippet Beeret. I know I still got it wrong, but the question about sepia, that's actually kind of a great example of what, here's a person that, they know exactly what they want to learn, and that's it. Boom, that's the focus, and that's cool. But if you're going with the idea that you want to be good at photography and do all these different things, you've got to learn the basics, folks. You've got to learn the basics. You've got to learn how your gear works. You just have to, right? There are no shortcuts around it. And that's why I want you to please make sure you listen to the rest of Scott's interview, and so that you hear how he describes the amount of time it took him to learn those basics, to get to the point where he could consistently take great photographs. And I know you've all looked at his portfolio, and I promise you, once you hear the number of hours, you're going to be depressed after looking at his portfolio, realizing how long it took him to get there, and realizing you've basically all been trying to cut corners. You got to put in the hard work. It's just that simple, right? Cameras have gotten so good. Flashes have gotten so good. Lighting has gotten so, all of it has gotten so good that it's easier to get going, but that tricks you. That tricks you into thinking it's a lot easier than it really is. Because every now and then you get lucky. Every now and then you get good stuff. But ultimately, you're not going to get consistent stuff if you don't have the foundational tools. Pellerus Jack, thank you so much for the super chat. And I really, really appreciate the kind words. I appreciate it. So let's see here. From Tippet Beeret, I know I'm still getting it wrong. I know I am. Anyway, in what ways would you combine writing skills with an interest in photography when writing and photography are not your full-time job? I mean, that's interesting. It sounds like I'm trying to kind of look at the right way to go here, in the sense that how would you combine it? I wouldn't, unless you're passionate about doing those two things, right? Because here's the challenge that a lot of people have. They get a camera, they get into photography because it's fun. Nothing wrong with fun. You guys hear me say it all the time. I'm all for fun, right? I am. But then they kind of get this bug where it's like, ooh, I want to do more. Like, I want to be like that guy, or I want to be able to do what that person's doing, that kind of a thing. And what's missing between the, oh, this is fun, and the, oh, I want to do that, is passion. Passion is what makes all the work easy. Passion is what makes all the work tolerable. Passion is what makes all the work not work. Without passion, it's a lot harder to get to where those other people are. Period. It just is, right? So, you start talking about the idea of, well, combining writing skills and then photography, that's a lot of extra work. Because also, I mean, writing is very challenging too. You don't just put words down, right? There's good grammar, there's good storytelling, all that kind of stuff. So I would say, number one, it should be something you're passionate about. Number two, whatever it is you're writing and photographing, it should be something that you're passionate about. And then certainly if you are looking at the idea of, well, could I make money doing this? Absolutely. There's tons of opportunities for content creators, especially ghost creators, basically writing for other websites and things like that. There's tons of opportunity and tons of money there. But again, it's just like anything else. You're not going to make the good money unless you're producing great work. So, you got to put in the, the effort and the time, et cetera. And then I would suggest that that's where the sepia thing becomes challenging, because once you start looking commercially, you don't see many blogs, you don't see many publications, you don't see many people doing sepia at all. So I get it. Maybe that's an opportunity to do something unique. But the challenge is, understand that sepia, it kind of triggers a thought process of kind of that old school vibe. And maybe that's why you like it, which is fine. But that's what it triggers in most people that see it. So if you're going to do something that is actually going to be in demand, because believe me, sepia is not in demand at all. So if you're going to do something that's creates a demand, it's going to have to be something that's really unique and different, right? That's going to be the key. Okay. All right. So let's see. Scrolling on back up here. I thought there was another question that went by, and now I'm not seeing it. Maybe I did get them all. I think I did. So there's one question here, and I don't know the answer to it, but let me at least acknowledge it. Charlie L. Firmware upgrades on Godox flashes and transmitters. I have a cell phone data cable, USB-C to USB. It's not a charging cable. What cable do I need, as this doesn't seem to be working? Charlie, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm off the top of my head, I have no idea. I would have to go grab a flash, grab a cable, and all that stuff, and that would take me a little while. So I apologize. Google it. I would simply Google it, and I'm sure that you'll be able to find some answers. And if that doesn't work for you, go to Facebook and search for Godox and the word groups. There are several huge Godox communities on Facebook. If you join those groups, type the question there, you'll get an answer like that. I'm confident. But I apologize, off the top of my head, I do not remember what that cable looks like. The one thing for me, just being honest, I rarely update my Godox strobes for the firmware and that kind of stuff. I mean, when I buy them, if they're doing everything I need them to do and they're working great, I'm happy. That's good. I don't feel that I have to go and update them and change them all the time. Certainly if there was something like revolutionary, or there was something that was like causing them to overheat or blow up or something, then I would take the time. But yeah, I don't. There's got to be like a worthwhile difference. Kind of like, with my Olympus cameras, when Olympus does a firmware upgrade, there are usually, features involved. So yes, then I'm going to go ahead and do it. So, okay. All right, gang. That about wraps things up for this week. I am over time as always. Shocker. Great questions tonight, folks. Thank you. Really, really good. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for a great night of chatting about all things photography. Maxwell, best marketing advice to bring new business. I saw that question, so let me tell you this. It's too broad a question, man. Anybody that answers that question for you just likes to hear themselves talk. So you're not going to get an answer from me, but I'll make you a deal. You come back next week and you give me more information. Tell me what kind of photography you do, what your goals are, what you're trying to achieve, and what you're struggling with. I will give you some solutions. You have my word. So I'm not blowing you off. I'm just saying, look, you got to put in a little more work, and then I'll bust my butt to help you. All right, gang? So remember, please don't forget to download the podcast. You make sure that you hear the rest of that interview with Scott Robert Lim. I hope to see you again next Wednesday for a very different kind of interview. It's not going to be a photographer next week, but the interview that we're having is all about lighting. In other words, we're going to go into the gear realm a little bit. But don't worry, we're not going to be talking about which piece of gear is different or better. We're going to be talking about what it takes to bring gear to market. We're going to be talking about what you should really be worried about and really be paying attention to when you are looking at new lighting. So again, something really different, and I think you'll find it very interesting. Really good information. In the meanwhile, gang, stay safe and healthy, and whatever you do, please remember these words.
Thanks for watching this episode of TOGCHAT. Don't forget to download this week's podcast for even more TOG knowledge. The link is in the show notes. Now go and pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot, it's your next shot. Adios.